The scrawny, flea-bitten mongrel had been a fixture in the neighborhood for a few weeks, a ghost of fur and bone that darted between parked cars and garbage bins. But now, she was unmistakably pregnant, her belly a heavy, low-slung burden that made her walk a slow, waddling shuffle. To the pack of bored teenagers who ruled the cul-de-sac with their cruelty, she wasn't a living creature in need. She was a target. Their ringleader, a thick-necked boy named Kyle, had christened her It. The game was simple. Whenever It appeared, they would chase her. They would shout, hurl small stones that stung her hide, and blast air horns from their phones to watch her flinch. The dog, who had likely known only hardship in her short life, learned a new kind of fear. It wasn't just the hunger or the cold. It was the terror of the human voice raised in anger, the sharp pain of a pebble against her ribs. Her only defense was to flee, to find a shadow to melt into until the coast was clear. This particular afternoon, the cruelty escalated. Kyle and his friends, fueled by a mix of boredom and a need to assert their dominance, cornered her near the storm drain at the end of the block. They didn't just want to chase her away this time, they wanted to see her panic. They wanted to get rid of her for good. They closed in, a semicircle of jeering faces, their sneakers crunching on the gravel. "Get out of here, you ugly mutt!" Kyle yelled, kicking a spray of dirt at her. The dog, her sides heaving, her eyes wide with a primal terror, looked for an escape. The only path not blocked by her tormentors was the short driveway of the house on the corner. It was a quiet, well-kept property with a flagpole in the front yard and a large, shaded porch. With nowhere else to go, she made a desperate choice. She bolted up the driveway and, with the last of her energy, hauled her heavy body onto the cool concrete of the porch. She collapsed in the far corner, behind a large terracotta pot, making herself as small as possible. She was trembling violently, a low, pathetic whine escaping her throat. The boys stopped at the edge of the property. The lawn was immaculate, the house silent. For a moment they hesitated. This was Mr. Vance's house. Mr. Vance was the quiet man who lived alone, the one who kept to himself and whose comings and goings were as regular as the sunrise. No one knew much about him, just that he was fit and seemed serious. The legend, started by Kyle's older brother, was that he was some kind of military guy. The unspoken rule was that you didn't mess with Mr. Vance's property. "Come on, let's get it," one of the boys urged, his bravado returning. But as they took a tentative step onto the driveway, the screen door of the house opened with a soft, familiar squeak. A man stepped out onto the porch. He was tall and lean, with close-cropped hair and a stillness about him that was more unnerving than any shout. He wore plain khaki shorts and a gray t-shirt that did little to hide the coiled strength in his shoulders and arms. This was Cole Vance. He didn't look at the boys right away. His gaze went straight to the corner of the porch, to the shivering, frightened animal hiding behind the pot. He saw the bulging belly, the matted fur, the raw fear in her eyes that shifted from him to the teenagers at the foot of his driveway. In a single, sweeping glance, he took in the whole scene. The trapped dog, the guilty stances of the boys, the lingering echo of their shouts in the air. His job, the one he left behind in places most people couldn't pronounce, was built on observation. He read people, situations, and threats the way others read a book. He saw the story of the last few minutes written in the dog's terror and the boys' defiant yet uncertain postures. The leader, Kyle, puffed out his chest. "That dog's a menace, Mr. Vance. We were just trying to get rid of it for you," he said, his voice cracking slightly. Cole Vance's eyes, a calm and penetrating gray, finally settled on Kyle. He didn't blink. He didn't raise his voice. When he spoke, his voice was low and even, a tone that carried the absolute authority of a man who had commanded life-and-death situations. "Get off my property." The simple command hung in the air. There was no anger, no threat. It was a statement of fact, as immovable as the porch itself. The bravado drained from the boys' faces. They exchanged a quick, nervous glance and then scrambled back onto the sidewalk, muttering under their breath. From a safe distance, Kyle turned back and shouted, "It's just a stupid dog! You can keep it!" before they all disappeared around the corner. The silence that followed was heavy. Cole stood still for a long moment, watching the empty street, ensuring they were truly gone. Only then did he turn his full attention to the dog. He didn't approach her directly. He knew that would only amplify her fear. Instead, he slowly crouched down, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He sat on the porch step, his back to her, giving her his profile. He was presenting himself not as a threat, but as a presence, a safe one. He could hear her ragged breathing begin to slow just a fraction. He stayed there for a long time, just sitting, as the afternoon sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the lawn. He thought about the word the boy had used. It. He thought about packs, about territory, about the instinct to drive out the weak. He'd seen that behavior in the most dangerous places on Earth. He hadn't expected to find it in his own front yard. Finally, without turning around, he spoke, his voice a soft rumble. "You're all right now." It wasn't a command, just a simple reassurance. He slowly stood up and went inside, leaving the screen door unlatched. A few minutes later, he returned with a chipped ceramic bowl. He filled it with cool, fresh water from the hose and placed it a few feet from where she lay. Then, he went back inside. The dog, whose name no one would ever know, watched him through the gap in the porch railing. She watched the door, waiting for the shouts, for the stone. They never came. After a long while, the overwhelming thirst won out over her fear. She crawled, her belly scraping the concrete, and drank the water in long, desperate laps. When she was done, she retreated to her corner, but her trembling had almost completely stopped. For the first time in weeks, perhaps in her entire life, she had been given something without having something taken away in return. Cole watched her from his window, a silent guardian. He had a mission now, one that felt both foreign and profoundly simple. It wasn't about eliminating a threat. It was about nurturing a life. The next morning, the dog was still there, a tight ball of fur in the corner. Cole went about his routine, his movements slow and predictable. He walked to the end of the driveway to get the newspaper, deliberately not looking at her. He sat on the porch steps to drink his coffee, the same spot as the day before. He was building a pattern, creating a world of non-threatening predictability. Later, he brought out a real meal. Not just water, but a small can of tuna he'd mixed with some rice. The smell was undeniable. Her nose twitched, her head lifted. He placed the bowl down and retreated to his step. The internal battle was visible in her eyes, fear versus hunger. Hunger won. She crept forward, her body low to the ground, snatched a mouthful, and scurried back to her corner to eat it. It took her 3 trips to finish the bowl. It was progress. For 3 days, this was their dance. She stayed on the porch, and he provided. He noticed she was restless, constantly shifting, her breathing becoming labored. He knew what was coming. He wasn't a veterinarian, but he was a combat medic. He'd delivered babies in field hospitals, in mud huts, under fire. The signs were universal. On the 3rd night, the air was thick with the promise of a summer storm. The dog's quiet whines turned into sharp, pained yelps. Cole, who had been reading in his living room, was on his feet in an instant. He slipped outside. The storm was beginning to break, fat drops of rain plinking on the porch roof. He found her in the corner, her body racked with contractions. She looked up at him, and for the first time there was no fear in her eyes, only a raw, primal plea for help. He didn't hesitate. He went into his garage and returned with a large, flattened cardboard box, some old, clean towels, and a powerful flashlight. He set up a makeshift nest in the driest part of the porch, a sheltered alcove near the front door. He spoke to her in a low, steady stream of words, the kind of calm, directive tone he used to keep a wounded teammate focused. "Easy now. You're okay. You're in a safe place. Just focus on the work." He gently lifted her. She was light, little more than skin and bones beneath her pregnant belly. He placed her in the cardboard box and she immediately began to paw at the towels, instinct taking over. Cole knelt beside her, the rain now hammering down, creating a curtain of water around them. He held the flashlight, providing light, and watched. It was messy and raw and utterly beautiful. One by one, the puppies arrived, slick, blind, mewling little creatures. The mother, exhausted but driven, cleaned each one, severing the cords with her teeth. Cole was there for every second. When one of the pups seemed still, too quiet, he reached in with practiced hands, clearing its tiny airway until it let out a squeak. He worked alongside her, a silent partner in the miracle unfolding on his porch. By the time the storm had passed and the first pale light of dawn began to seep through the clouds, it was over. 6 tiny puppies squirmed and nursed against their mother's belly. She was spent, her head resting on the towel, but her eyes were calm, watching her babies. She looked up at Cole, and in that look was a depth of gratitude no word could ever capture. Cole sat back on his heels, his knees aching, his clothes damp. He looked at the new family, then out at the quiet, rain-washed street. He felt a profound sense of peace, a different kind of satisfaction than any mission had ever provided. He had not eliminated a threat. He had created a sanctuary. The news of the Porch puppies, as the neighbor kids started calling them, spread through the neighborhood faster than wildfire. Mrs. Gable from 2 houses down, who always walked her perfect poodle, was the first to approach, bearing a bag of premium puppy food. She had seen the whole incident with the boys from her window and had felt a pang of guilt for not intervening. The sight of the tough, quiet Mr. Vance kneeling by a box of newborn puppies melted the last of her reserve. Others followed. A young couple brought an old dog bed. A little girl came with her mother, clutching a worn-out stuffed animal to give to the mama dog. The story of the Bullies and the seal had taken on a life of its own, transforming the dog from a despised stray into a neighborhood celebrity and a symbol of something they all wished they had done. Cole accepted the gifts with a quiet grace, but he was also watchful. He saw the genuine interest in some, but also the casual curiosity in others. He knew these puppies wouldn't be tiny balls of fluff forever. They would grow. They would need homes. He began to formulate a plan. Meanwhile, the pack of boys kept their distance, but they watched. The dynamic had shifted. Their target was now under the protection of the most formidable man on the street. Kyle, in particular, was conflicted. He saw his friends' mothers cooing over the dogs, saw the once mangy It now contentedly nursing her pups on a clean towel, guarded by a man who was the embodiment of strength. The narrative he had built, of It being a worthless pest, was crumbling. One afternoon, about 3 weeks later, Cole was on the porch, gently handling each puppy, getting them used to human touch. He was checking their eyes, their tiny paws. The mother, whom he had started calling Lucky under his breath, watched him with trusting eyes. He heard a scuffling sound and looked up. Kyle was standing at the end of the driveway, alone. He looked different without his friends, smaller, less certain. Cole didn't say a word. He just looked at him with that same unnerving, patient stillness. Kyle shuffled his feet, shoving his hands deep into his pockets. He stammered. My mom sent me. She wants to know if you're going to, need homes for them. She said maybe we could take one. It was a peace offering wrapped in a question. Cole studied the boy for a long, uncomfortable moment. He saw the mask of bravado was gone, and underneath it was just a kid, probably parroting the cruelty he'd learned elsewhere. The mission wasn't just about Lucky anymore. It was about breaking the cycle. A direct confrontation wouldn't do it. An example might. He nodded slowly. Maybe, he said, his voice even, but they're not ready yet, and it's not my decision alone. He glanced at Lucky. It's hers, too. He stood up and, in a gesture that surprised even himself, he beckoned Kyle forward.